Welcome to the Real World. My name is Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 79 of the Real World podcast. Today we're talking all about our favorite Star Wars characters. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Real World podcast. We are excited to have you. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. If you're a movie fan, you're in the right place. Today we're talking all about our favorite Star Wars characters. But first, let's run down some of the latest movie news. The 2024 Oscar nominees have been announced. Check out our reaction video on the channel right now. Some big surprises, some big snubs, as there typically is at the Academy Awards. Very interested to see what exactly comes out on top on March 10th. Make sure you watch out for our next award show, The Realies, right here on the Real World YouTube channel. We're picking all of our favorite movies and performances from 2023. That's going to be a lot of fun. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck set their next film up. It's called Animals. Ben Affleck will direct the film. Matt Damon will star in the film. It's said to be featuring a kidnapping plot and will start production later this year to be released next year on Netflix. The Book of Eli prequel series is in development. John Boyega is going to produce and star as a younger version of Denzel Washington's titular character in the prequel. That movie is one of my favorites, so I'm really excited to see what they do with the prequel series. Roadhouse trailer finally dropped. This is Amazon's next big movie. There's a little bit of controversy because the director Doug Liman, who's behind such hits as Mr. and Mrs. Smith, The Bourne Identity, Jumper, Edge of Tomorrow, is boycotting the premiere because he was told that the film would get a theatrical release before going to streaming, but Amazon has decided to put it straight to streaming on Amazon Prime. So I'm curious to see what ends up happening with this movie. It's kind of interesting. Definitely looks like a fun remake of the 1989 original. That's it for movie news. Let's jump into our main topic. All right, folks. Well, that is it for movie news. Now it is time to jump into our main topic, which is our favorite Star Wars characters. We're huge Star Wars fans here. We'll find any excuse to do a Star Wars podcast. Joining me, fellow Star Wars fanatic, is Josh. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. Eager to talk about Star Wars. Like you said, any chance we can get.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a bit of a stretch because we were like, man, what topic are we gonna do? Because there weren't a lot of big movies coming out this weekend, but we found out that Daisy Ridley has a movie coming out, so we were like, ah, she's in Star Wars, so we'll talk about Star Wars because she has a movie coming out. Again, bit of a stretch, but hey, we'll take it what we can get. So, what we decided to do is kind of something different. We're not kind of running down our, top five Star Wars movies or anything like that. We're going to be talking about our favorite Star Wars characters from each and every movie, series, game, book, comic, all that stuff. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. 25 characters will be discussed between the two of us, so 50 total, unless there's some crossover, which I'm sure there will be. But we just picked our favorite character from each thing. And so it's going to be a lot of fun talking about, what makes these our favorite Star Wars characters and that kind of thing. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so we're starting off with Star Wars Visions because Visions kind of takes place all over the place. So we didn't know, really know where to. We're trying to go this by timeline. There are some episodes that take place way in the past, so that's why we said it first. But Visions, what a great series. First of all, I'm just a huge fan of this idea of kind of like letting animation studios run wild with Star Wars. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
And they've released two seasons now, two volumes. Studios from all over the world are involved here. So I ended up picking a character, of course, from my favorite episode, which is the Ninth Jedi. It's a
Mm.
character by the name of Lazima. Lazima is this very kind of honorable, humble sabersmith. He's the one who's building these lightsabers in this episode. And I just really liked his character. He kind of is attempting to help restart the Jedi Order. And he's also very protective of his daughter, Kara, who's really the main character of this episode. He really only has a pretty brief scene in this short, but it's just very impactful. I liked his character design. I like the whole idea of a sabersmith. Like that's a kind of a new
Yeah.
idea in Star Wars that I'd never really thought of. And of course, he's instrumental in what happens later in the episode with all those lightsabers that he creates. So, just a great character. He's got a great quote. He says, "Remember that while the Force exists in every living thing, only those who develop their connection to it will have the power to wield it." And so I thought that was a great kind of summation of kind of what the Force is and what it does. And again, just a cool design on him. I forget the voice actor. I meant to look up who voiced him, but he did a great job voicing the character. One that I would like to see more of. Don't know if we'll ever get to see that, but yeah, that's my pick for Visions. So, Josh, who do you have for your favorite character out of Star Wars Visions?
This was hard because they're all shorts, and I feel like it's more well, kind of because that it's hard to connect to a character, one character versus like the overall story. So
Sure.
like the Ninth Jedi is also my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't really feel like there was like one character that really drew my attention that way.
Sure.
And I thought maybe, oh, the guy from the duel, but he doesn't really say anything. I could have picked him. But
Sure.
what I went with was the Jedi from the Village Bride, whose name is F, as in Foxtrot. I don't know
Excellent.
why it's just F, but that's what they decided to give her. She's never called by name in the episode.
Right.
But
Right.
for me, but this one is because that moment when she's like, from the shot that you see around the internet, where she's holding out her hand and using the force of that moment, was just that combined with the music and everything was so striking and so stood out in my mind. It still stands out in my mind. So that's why I picked her.
Excellent. Great pick. Yeah, that is a great episode. That's I think that's my brother's favorite episode, The Village Bride. It has a very kind of almost Studio Ghibli feel to it. And they did a great job with that. Yeah, that's a great character. There's a lot of cool stuff in that episode that's very unique. And so yeah, excellent choice. Excellent choice. All right. Well, that's one down. Now we're on to Tales of the Jedi. So Tales of the Jedi is one of the latest animated series from Dave Filoni, who produced this. He got to basically tell six stories focused on two characters, Count Dooku and Ahsoka. A lot of other characters show up as well, but I did pick Count Dooku for this one. Dooku is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, mostly due to a book, which I know we're not at books yet, but I had to bring this up talking about Dooku. It's called Jedi Lost. This book is excellent. It's a story that starts off with Asajj Ventress, and as she's kind of learning about who Dooku was, who of course was her master throughout the Clone Wars. So definitely recommend reading that if you're at all a fan of Dooku. But in Tales of the Jedi, we really get a lot with him, what happened to him, who he was, before he fell to the dark side.
Yeah.
Because when we meet him in episode two, he's already, turned to the dark side and is helping the Emperor with his plans. But here we see him as a Jedi Knight training Qui-Gon Jinn, which was cool that they got Liam Neeson's son to voice a young Qui-Gon Jinn. I think Corey
Oh,
Burton was the one who returned as Dooku, who voiced him in the Clone
oh,
Wars.
good.
Of course, Christopher Lee, who played the role in the live action films, had passed away at this point. But a combination of, of course, Christopher Lee and his incredible acting talent with Corey Burton and his, great voiceover work really came together in this episode. I just feel like we got to know the character, what he's all about, why he turned, is really explored here more than anywhere else. And we got a great moment with Yaddle as well, which was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Finally see her in action. So yeah, I like Dooku for so many reasons. It's not just in Tales of the Jedi, but we find out in the books and elsewhere he's born into kind of royalty basically on his planet. His family's very affluent. So he's very much a politician in many ways as well as a Jedi. Once he's learns he can wield the Force. He of course also becomes a Sith Lord with maybe the coolest Sith Lord name, Darth Tyrannus, which is I think a great name that they don't use enough in Star Wars. It's such a great
Yeah, it's
name.
true.
Um, but his whole thing is he really just wants to bring peace and order to the galaxy. That's really what he's all about. And he just goes about doing it the wrong way. He uses the wrong means to get there. So it's one of those very kind of cautionary tales that I think we can learn a lot from. And so he ends up really ultimately being no more than just a tool used by Darth Sidious, unfortunately, but really compelling character. Um, Probably my favorite quote from him isn't actually in Tales of the Jedi. It's in episode 2 when he meets with Obi-Wan and tells him that,
Mhm.
together we can destroy the Sith. He really does want to bring order and peace. He doesn't really want to be a Sith or have them take over. They're just kind of a means to his ends. And so that's really, really good. That'd be a great, they're talking about doing this what if series. I would love to see what if Obi-Wan joined Dooku and they defeated
Oh
Sidious.
my
That would be a
gosh.
fun episode to do. But anyways, that was my pick for Tales of the Jedi. Josh, what do you have for Tales of the Jedi?
He was also my pick as well.
Okay,
He's
excellent.
also one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. As much as
Yeah.
it would have been interesting to see a Darth Jar Jar, I'm so glad we got so glad we got Dooku instead. Because
Yes.
yeah, like you said, like he's such a compelling character and a complex character.
Yeah.
And just from the moment, and like you said in that scene in episode 2, when he says like he postulates to Obi-Wan that Qui-Gon would have joined him. Like
Right.
that's just like what? Would have joined the
Yeah.
Sith? No, but would have joined like what's going on? It's kind of like
Yeah.
a little mind explosion moment. And
Right.
like from then on, it's like, who is this guy? Who was this guy?
Hmm.
What is his relationship with Qui-Gon and the Jedi and everything that would make him say that and kind of believe it? And you're not sure how much he's just because he's so cunning, you're not sure how much he's just saying things or how much he actually means them,
Hmm.
like how much is real or not, which apparently everything else he said was true.
Yeah.
So I don't
He's
know,
a
so
very
interesting. But in
honest,
Tales of
he's
the Jedi, like you said, we see
yeah, he's a very
yes,
honest character
yes, he
overall.
is.
Yeah. Hmm.
He, he's an honorable villain,
Right.
which are rare, but they stand out.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I really liked him uh, in Tales of the Jedi because we see, like you said, exactly, we see his fall, which is so cool. I haven't read that Dooku book yet, but I have
Mm.
read in the Legends series, the glare doesn't get on it. The Jedi Law or Legacy of the Jedi by Jude Watson, which
Oh,
covers like a master and apprentice relationship with each of them,
cool.
which is really interesting. And Dooku is the thread through all of it, which is
Okay.
really cool. So it kind of goes into what his younger years, which obviously doesn't really matter anymore because it's not canon, but like essentially the mystery of who he was has always been there.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see that play out in the different ways as here in Tales of the Jedi as we get to see more of him.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, they did some great stuff with him. And three relatively short episodes. Tales of the Jedi, those episodes are, I think, maybe 10 or 15 minutes each. So they just did a great job though
They're
with
not
all
long enough.
three. Yeah, yeah, they're not very long, but they're really good. So all right, awesome. Well, we were in lockstep on that one. Now we're moving on to the films. So again, going in chronological order by timeline, we are starting with episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So the Phantom Menace, this was a tough one, man. I really had a hard time. There were several characters that I really wanted to talk about here. I ended up actually going with Obi-Wan Kenobi. I really
Hmm.
like Ewan McGregor's take on young Obi-Wan. He's coming off of having to portray a younger version of a character who was iconic in the original trilogy, played by Sir Alec Guinness, one of the best actors ever. So a daunting challenge, but he was up to it. And he really did a good job of kind of letting us see some of those Obi-Wan mannerisms and things like that, but really putting his own stamp on it. It's a much younger version of the character, so he's a lot more brash and kind of impulsive. Yet he still has that very kind of honorable, very by the book kind of nature, right? He's kind of like that Jedi who's like, let's just stick to the code, stick to the plan, do it. And it's funny because him being paired with Qui-Gon, who's kind of the opposite of that, he's like, let's just do our own
Yeah.
thing. It makes for a great relationship. And so, this younger Obi-Wan, we really get to see how kind of powerful he is. A lot, of course, more so than we did in the original trilogy. Very, fast, very skilled with the lightsaber, strong in the Force, very confident, very heroic character. I feel like he's kind of the hero of episode 1 in many ways. He kind of again, I like that he butts heads with Qui-Gon a lot. And then of course at the end ends up losing Qui-Gon, which is a huge moment for him, as well as for Anakin, of course. But I think we don't think enough about how impactful that was to Obi-Wan and him making this promise to Qui-Gon to take Anakin on as his Padawan, really before he was ready for that. So a lot of big
Hmm.
stuff happens in episode one with Obi-Wan specifically. I feel like it's a really big moment for him. He kind of immediately gains his own apprentice. And through it all, through Obi-Wan's whole story, which I guess I should mention, we're only talking about each of these characters one time. So that's why I may talk a little bit more about them other than just this one movie. But Obi-Wan is a great character. He's one of my favorites because he's one of the few that really never loses hope throughout the whole series, and the whole, Star Wars saga is really about hope.
Mm.
And he kind of becomes hopeless kind of later on a little bit, but he's one of those characters that always in the back of his head, I feel like there's hope for the future. There's Anakin, and then
Yeah.
now, okay, Anakin's fallen. Now there's Luke, so there's another hope. So he's one of those characters that, while he kind of gets down at times, he's always kind of in the fight, always kind of, trying to move forward, and preserve the future, which I think is really really great. Again, here he's a lot younger and more kind of rough around the edges, I guess you could say. One of my favorite lines. It's kind of a very rude line. He says, "Why do I get the feeling we've picked up another pathetic life form?" After Qui-Gon's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I found this kid," and he's like, "Oh, come on, please." They've already got Jar Jar. They're like, "We've got a little kid to take care of now too. Come on." But it's great. It's great to see his
Yeah.
growth after that movie into the
Mm.
other films and series. So yeah, that was my pick for episode one. Josh, who do you have in episode one? I bet I can guess, but who do you got?
Go guess.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yep, Qui-Gon
There you
Jinn.
go. Great pick. He
So
was,
this one was
yeah, he was up there for me too.
I think you said this was a really hard one for you. This one, I will say, the oddly enough, the trilogy ones were each trilogy was the hardest because
Hmm.
all their stories are so tied together, and a
Yeah,
lot of them are more isolated, contained within their own within that story, I should say. But
right.
except except for this one was easy to. This one was like, I think I looked at everything, I was like, oh, easy, Qui-Gon Jinn, first answer.
Right.
Um, yeah, and I don't know, I don't know if he's my favorite character in all of Star Wars. It's pretty close. It's between him and Obi-Wan, just because Obi-Wan's also like far more encompassing throughout the saga. But
Sure.
yeah, I think he's definitely my favorite Jedi. Just because,
Okay.
like you said, he is like the total opposite of, I don't know, kind of like the Jedi in general. He's more about the living force, which I think is supposed
Hmm.
to be kind of a reference to the Holy Spirit, and like
Sure.
uh, which obviously it's not a correlation one to
Sure.
one, but like kind of being in the moment and just keeping your eyes open
Yeah.
and willing to do things outside the book, um, not that are wrong, but that maybe bend the rules because you see the good in what's going on right there.
Sure.
Um, so I like that. I like his. He has a lot of he has a lot of empathy
Yeah.
and compassion, and he kind of lets that lead him, even if it bends the rules, which is really cool.
Yep.
So like you said, he is a really good pairing
Mm.
with Obi-Wan, and uh, yeah, he's just that even that fatherly figure to Anakin. He's just such a like cool Jedi, and it's Liam Neeson. So I mean, come on. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. There's many quotes from him that I really like in the first movie in Phantom Menace. Like think, don't feel, uh,
Mm.
and just all this kind of stuff like that that just makes him seem like a wise character, but an irregular isn't the word I'm looking for. Um,
Just kind of a rogue, kind of
but
a
yeah, like
renegade.
an outside, yeah, but really wise at the same time,
Right.
and so you
Right.
respect him.
Definitely. Yeah. Great pick. Great pick. All right. Moving on to episode two, Attack of the Clones. Another tough one. Good mix here. A lot of characters I enjoy in this movie. Ended up going with Padme Amidala. This
Mm,
is my favorite Padme stuff. I think she's just great in this movie. Very confident, very intelligent. You can tell she was kind of raised to be a politician, obviously. becoming queen at such a young age, and now serving as senator. She's very selfless, very, much a character that's all about serving others. That's very evident in this film. She isn't afraid of a fight either, which is cool. She doesn't just fight on the Senate
Yeah.
floor. She actually can get a blaster in her hand and go to work there too. So, uh, great action sequences with her that involve her. That I think are a lot of fun here. Much more so than even episode one, and certainly more than episode three. So I just felt
Mhm.
like she was the most
Yeah.
active here. Um, of course, the love story, which people rag on a lot. I think it kind of works, honestly. I like a lot of it,
Yeah,
especially
I'm okay
Natalie
with it.
Portman's performance, I think is great. She's a very passionate character, and she has a lot of compassion as well that we get to see come through there. Very steadfast, throughout the whole all of the prequels, and has also kind of a great sense of humor. There's a couple of kind of funny moments with her there too. And another character who really remains quite hopeful, even in her darkest hours in episode three.
Mm.
She has, that great final line of, there's still good in him, referring to Anakin and stuff like that. And she really does try to kind of comfort Anakin. She can obviously tell he's going through a rough time in episode two, and tells him stuff like, you expect too much of yourself, or things like that just kind of help to comfort him. So she's a very kind of just almost maternal character in many ways, even though we don't really get to see her as a mom, unfortunately. But we definitely see her caring a lot about those around her, Obi-Wan, Anakin,
Yeah.
especially, the people of Naboo, even the Gungans, in episode one. So yeah, really like her in episode two, though, again, because the Battle of Geonosis, she just has some great moments. They're in the arena, it's a great sequence, and
Hmm.
the droid factory there and all that stuff. So that's why I ended up going with Padme in episode two. So, Josh, who do you have for Attack of the Clones?
This one was really hard. I almost had Padme. I almost had Obi-Wan. I almost
Mm.
had. I was like, oh, maybe Mace Windu, but I
Mm.
ultimately settled on Jango Fett.
Oh, nice pick. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just so. I don't know if iconic is the right word, but I don't know. He just stands out so much in this movie, and
Yeah.
I think he's got still in this one movie. I think he's gotten more action than Boba Fett has. Well, aside
Yes.
from the Boba Fett series, but
Sure.
um, as far as like
The
total
movies. Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
bossness,
Right.
he's gotten more than Boba. But
Sure.
yeah, just he's so cool, and there's that extra layer, kind of like anything that goes into that seeks to answer a question or postulate more questions, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
for characters that we already know. Like we've seen Boba Fett in the original trilogy, and only a little snippet, and like, who is this guy? And then you start to learn, oh, Mandalorian armor, and all this stuff. And then we see it here, multifaceted, both in the character of Jango himself and as he's used for the clones. Like it was such a cool, brilliant, like story point that Lucas did with that double airing. He's both the bounty hunter and the clones,
Right.
which is a really cool idea. And just all the action we see in both on Kamino, mainly on Kamino, that whole sequence with him and Obi-Wan fighting. Um, and then later, sadly, in the arena. But yeah, I don't
Right.
know. He's just such a cool character, and Tamura Morrison just does it so well, and immediately gives the character so much weight. And he just has that, like, you immediately know that he means business, and that he's like got that coolness factor, and like he knows what he's doing, and you're gonna be in trouble if you get on the wrong side of him.
Yeah. It's crazy that he faces off against a Jedi and, holds his own. Pretty incredible stuff. Yeah. It's a great action sequence. It's a great performance. Even though he's not in a ton of the movie, it's definitely memorable. Tamara Morrison's performance in that
Hmm.
is so good. You get to see him, as this crazy bounty hunter, and then as like a dad, like kind of a crazy upbringing Boba had with this crazy bounty hunter dad and all these
It's
clones, and
true.
what a weird situation. But yeah, he's a great character. He's definitely one I considered as well. I like his line, I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. That's a great kind of sums up his character
Mm,
very well. It's just a very kind of simple, straightforward guy. So yeah, good pick. Good
yeah.
pick. I like it. All right. Well, that's it for episode two. Now, before we get to episode three, though, we got to talk about the Clone Wars, which is a hugely
Oh,
popular animated series, one of my favorite animated series, maybe of all time. I mean, it's just really, really good the way it expanded the lore of Star Wars. We got to visit so many worlds, so many characters here to choose
yes.
from. This was difficult, but there are some that stand out to me. I
It's
have like a
impossible.
handful that I really, really like in this series. So
Mm.
it's probably a little easier for me than most because there's a character that as soon as I saw his first episode, I was like, man, this is a really compelling character. He's got a great point of view. I like the voice actor a lot. I like his whole look. I like his weapon. It's a very iconic weapon. It's become even more iconic. I went with Pre Vizsla. Pre Vizsla of Death Watch,
Uh,
the Mandalorian who tries to usurp the throne of Mandalore from Duchess Satine, who has a connection to Obi-Wan. So Obi-Wan gets connected in this episode, this initial episode where we meet this character. He comes back several times throughout the series. He's voiced by Jon Favreau, who of course now is, creator of The Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that's coming soon. But Pre Vizsla, I just think he's great. He's another one of these. You could call him honorable from if you're from a certain point of view, right? It's like if you're very much into the Mando creed,
true.
the warrior creed that he holds to, then he's a very honorable character. But he's a political leader who's kind of trying to, through subterfuge, bring back his planet to its former glory, as he would put it, back in the
Mm.
the days when they were all warriors and it was a very warlike world. He's very anti-pacifism and I guess you could really say peace if you want to. It seems like he just always wants there to be war and fighting. But he's, born into a
Yeah.
very important clan, Clan Vizsla, who are mentioned several times throughout Star Wars and the Mandalorian series and in the Rebels series. So he's very much a warrior at heart, very skilled warrior. He's another one that goes toe to toe with
Mm.
Obi-Wan and holds his own for a while. He has a very kind of confrontational attitude, very kind of holier than thou, kind of he thinks he's above everyone else, one of those very
Yeah.
prideful characters that ends up ultimately being his downfall. He's very, angry, obviously with what's happened to his world. And he's the wielder of the dark saber, the first character that we see wield this weapon that now, of course, has come over into live action with the Mandalorian
Mm.
series, which is really cool to see. His own ancestor, Tar Vizsla, was the first Mandalorian Jedi. So he comes from a line of very important figures. And he's kind of a desperate character, especially after that initial arc where he kind of has to flee. We see him when he shows up next time, kind of him and his small band of Death Watch. They're trying to kind of rebuild and still kind of trying to influence Mandalore. And they kind of just become terrorists essentially after that, ultimately teaming up with Darth
Mm.
Maul. And that's ultimately what ends up destroying Pre Vizsla is his joining forces with that character that's seeking revenge on both the Sith and the Jedi. And so that's where he meets his ultimate demise, but it's a great way to go out. I mean, by Darth Maul, I mean that's probably the best way you could ever die in Star Wars is by the hand of that
True.
awesome character. So yeah, great character. His line, one of his first line, the first line we see him say when he pulls out the dark saber, he says, "This lightsaber was stolen from the Jedi Temple by my ancestors during the fall of the Old Republic. Since then, many Jedi have died upon its blade. Prepare yourself to join them." It's a great line. It's one of my favorite lines in Clone
It
Wars.
is.
Favreau delivers it very well. So yeah, Clone Wars, and again, a tough one to pick from. There were a lot of choices, but
Mm.
had to end up going with Pre Vizsla. So what is your pick for Clone Wars, Josh?
And say real quick on Previously, he's
Yeah.
almost as you're talking about with like Maul and everything. He's almost like the beginning. He is the beginning of the fall of Mandalore. Uh, just
Yeah.
like if he wasn't there, Maul probably wouldn't have had that edge to get in to
Yep.
gain power, and of course everything else is going to crap around him, so it's not necessarily like all his fault. But
Sure. That's a good point
I don't
though.
know. He
Yeah.
just kind of begins that destabilization.
Yep. Yep. He's instrumental for sure.
But yeah, this one was impossible to to pick. There's so many.
Yeah,
I could have gone like with so many characters. Even Anakin, I think, shines the brightest here.
he
Uh,
does. Yeah.
Maybe more than any other spot in the saga.
Hmm.
Um, Cad Bane is like
Yes. Oh man.
probably my favorite bounty hunter, and of course
Yeah.
he's seen in this. This is his main the main time we see him. Obi-Wan, James Arnold Taylor just does such a
Mm,
great job
yep.
with the character and just building upon everything that we saw in the films.
Hmm.
And actually, it's a little bit of a spoiler. I don't have Obi-Wan anywhere in here. And it was
Wow.
because he was so well done across everything. And
Yeah.
he's like one of my favorite characters, but I couldn't it was like he's so well done across everything. Even the Clone
Right.
Wars, it was like he would have been in the Clone Wars. I would have picked him, but there were so many other characters. It was
Yeah.
impossible.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
to just pick one. I had to pick one. But
Right.
yeah, because he was so well done across everything, it was like I can't really. I don't know. I couldn't pick a spot for him. But even Asajj Ventress or Captain Rex, like there's so
Mm,
many good characters in the
yes.
show. So ultimately, it came down between Obi-Wan, Darth Maul, and Ahsoka, which is like an impossible choice. Darth Maul is like such a good character, and I think out of all his character development or what have you is in the Clone Wars, and that's kind of like his prime, if you will. So I was like, I so wanted to pick him there, but ultimately I went with Ahsoka because this is also, I guess, her prime that we see the most development from her across everything she's been in, both this Rebels and her own show.
Sure.
But yeah, ultimately I went with Ahsoka here, especially like the last few episodes. Like it's just such as it's colliding with the end of Anakin as a Jedi, his story there, and like the overlap with Episode 3 moments is just it just makes everything else so impactful for a character. Really, I think since the whole arc with her leaving the Jedi, really, um, I mean, her character obviously has to develop because she's going through this total change and she has to learn and do all these different things. But I feel like at that point, she just has this uh, new maturity about her and I don't know, like her character just develops in such a spectacular way. There's just so much more depth and emotional heft, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
to her character.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great pick because yeah, she's kind of the star of that show. If you had to pick one, I mean, there's so many different ones, and I guess there's even a
Hmm.
few episodes where she doesn't even appear, but I think certainly appears in probably the most episodes of any character. And yeah, it's the story of her kind of development as a Jedi, and how instrumental she is in Anakin's story, even Obi-Wan's story, the story of Mandalore and all that. So yeah, excellent choice. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of journey she went on with the fans too. Obviously, they didn't have a great,
Hmm.
affection for her initially in the movie that was released. And then kind of as the story progressed, she just became a beloved character. Now she's one of the fan favorite characters out there. It's obviously why she has her own show now. So yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
it's really cool to see that journey with her and the fans. But yeah, she has a great storyline and all throughout the series. Her relationship with Anakin specifically and Padme, some great moments with her and Padme,
Hmm.
which is fun there too. So yeah, excellent choice.
And two, this is probably the first time that we get to see a master and apprentice relationship, like long term, more than just the length of a movie.
Great point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We don't get a whole lot with, I mean, we get Anakin and Obi-Wan in two movies, kind of, or two and a half, kind of. But yeah, that we usually don't get to see that kind of long relationship progress in a way that, you see her grow up and you see Anakin change a lot too, and the way they affect one another. It's really compelling, really good. All right, folks, we are on to episode three, Revenge of the Sith. Back to the live action films. Another tough one. A lot of great characters here, a lot of great moments here with all the characters. Really, really interesting stuff. I ended up going with Darth Sidious. Emperor
Mm.
Palpatine himself was my pick. It is canon that his first name is Sheev, which I think is great. A great first name, Sheev Palpatine. Sounds very sinister. Yeah, look, I mean, Ian McDiarmid, what a cool kind of journey he went on because he was cast initially in Return of the Jedi when he was much younger and playing this much older character. And then it's like, okay, now that you're older, we want you to play the younger version of the character. And so he just
Yeah.
did a great job throughout the prequels, though, of kind of planting the seeds with this character, revealing him
Yes.
slowly throughout these movies. And then here he just gets to go absolutely crazy with his evil. I mean, it's just the most pure evil character that I can think of in movies, really. I mean, just everything
Mm.
he does, he's trying to manipulate and he's trying to destroy and undermine everything that everyone's doing around him, pitting the Confederacy of Independent Systems against the Galactic Republic and doing all these crazy things, with Count Dooku and General Grievous, his minions, that he just doesn't care at all about. I mean, it's apparent from the first scene with Dooku fighting Anakin. He's like, kill him. It's like when Dooku looks at him like, what?
Mm.
You know, it's just some great moments he has throughout this film. I feel like his performance is just I don't really know if anyone else could pull it off because it's very theatrical.
Mm.
It's almost over the top. It's like right on the edge of going too far. Yet, he does still feel like a real character, that you believe exists in
Mm.
this world. So it's a really fine line, and I think he just toes it really well. All his scenes with Hayden Christensen are fantastic, especially the one at the Mon Calamari Opera, which is an iconic scene, very
Mm.
simple scene, but very well acted. And then, of course, his big moment to me is on the balcony with Mace Windu, where he screams "unlimited power" and
Oh,
just lets the lightning go. It's just a great
yes.
moment. It's just kind of crazy. It's kind of like, whoa, yikes! This guy's super powerful and he means business. He is not messing around. This is his moment, and he's been waiting for it, and he's finally taking his shot.
Mm.
Executing Order 66. I mean, all these just iconic moments I feel like we have with this character in this moment in this movie.
Yes.
And so it's just really well done. So yeah, great actor, great character, just so many great moments in this movie. So that's why he had to end up being my pick for episode three.
I say he was also my pick for episode
Oh,
three.
really?
Like you
Okay,
said,
cool.
yeah. I had to because he's like you said, there's so much for his character that comes out in this movie in particular,
Yeah,
and I don't think Ian McDiarmid gets enough credit for this role. Like you said, he's like one of the top all-time villains
yeah,
ever. Just like you said, the manipulation, like you see it throughout the movies and even some of the Legends books as well, where him and Anakin interact. There's a lot of that lifting up Anakin. Oh, why don't the Jedi also think of you like this? And just
yeah,
all those little seeds
right.
of turning. It's brilliant. Honestly, it's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most ingenious villains of all time, let alone one of the most evil. But
Yeah, he's very
and of course,
patient.
yes, a lot of villains wouldn't be that patient.
Right.
Um, but Ian McDiarmid has that theatrical background, so he's able to, like you said, pull it off with just such precision. And I think if I remember right, some of the behind the scenes I was watching in prequels a long time ago, like basically they wouldn't when they were filming they wouldn't redo takes of scenes that he was in for his sake. It would be for other people's sakes. Like he nailed it like every time.
Right.
And he's so good. He doesn't get enough credit as an actor
Mm-hmm.
or for this role.
Yep.
So yeah, just knocks out of the park. And both like Palpatine and then after the deformity as Sidious wearing that mask again, different mask, but
Right.
wearing the Sidious mask again and like being full-fledged Emperor. Yeah, like I don't think it would be so different if anyone else did it.
Yeah.
It would be kind of crazy.
I agree. It's funny you mentioned that, scarred, deformed, because that's one of my favorite. That's the line I wrote down as one of my favorites that he delivers is after all that happens
Mm.
and he's in the Senate and he says, "The attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed, but my resolve has never been
Yeah.
stronger. It's a great moment because it's again, it's him manipulating the masses of like, yeah, they tried to kill me. Look what they tried to
Yes.
do to me, but I'm still resolved. I'm still, gonna fight for the people, and he's taking over the galaxy. People are just applauding. Padme has her
Yes.
line about liberty dying, the
Oh, so
thunderous
good.
applause. So yeah, it's so many great moments with that character. I feel like it's his. I mean, it's called Revenge of the Sith. It's literally his movie, and he just does a great job.
Yeah. And not
Great.
only like his visual performance, but his vocal performance.
Oh
Like
yes.
it would be such a different character if he had a different voice. But
Right.
I don't know how he's able to do it. But he just brings even in Return of the Jedi, obviously we see it, but he just brings that gravitas and epicness
Yeah.
and power and evil in his voice is just so crazy
Totally.
and so
Totally.
cool.
Yeah. It's amazing. All right. Excellent. Well, that's it for the prequels. Now we are moving into a new era, and we are moving into the animated series, The Bad Batch. The Bad Batch is one of the newest animated series. It takes place directly after episode three. The first episode ties into it really well, shows you their perspective, these clone troopers, on those events, and then what happens thereafter. Some great new characters introduced. Some old characters come back for Bad Batch as well. So this was an interesting one. There's a good group here. I really wanted to pick someone from the Bad Batch itself, even though there are, several other characters
Mm,
that I like in it. So I ended up going with Crosshair. Crosshair to me
okay.
is so cool. He's just awesome. He's a marksman. So he's like an incredible shot. I mean, there's some like shots that he pulls off in this movie, bouncing lasers off of things that are just really fun to watch. So, for that element, for the visual element, he's taller and more slender. He's bald like, mini clones are, but he's got the cool target tattoo on his eye. D. Bradley Baker's doing a lot more of a kind of whispery kind of voice, which is really cool.
Mm.
Definitely sets him apart. D. Bradley Baker is just incredible. We got to talk about him because he voices all the clones and
Yeah,
really
doesn't get enough credit.
distinguishes them, specifically the Bad Batch. I mean, for the Bad Batch, he's really distinguishing them more than he's ever done before. And Crosshair, I just think he sounds really, really specific and unique. Um,
Mm.
he's a loyal soldier. That's how I kind of would describe Crosshair. He's loyal to whoever he's supposed to be serving, Republic, Empire, to him it doesn't matter. And I feel like he's got a little bit of like he's a little trigger happy, he kind of likes killing people. It's kind of like he has fun with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
But what's great about over the course of the series is that although even from the beginning, you really see that he does have a heart. He really does deep down have a conscience, and he knows what he's doing is wrong. And so his journey over the first two seasons, I can't wait for the third and see what's going to happen with him there. But the first two
Oh my
seasons, you
gosh.
really see him kind of change. I feel like he's the one that goes through probably the most change. Maybe him and Omega, I guess.
Mm.
And so yeah, he's a man of few words. He's fans, I guess many call him a traitor because he does betray his brothers. But again, he kind of has that deep down sense of brotherhood that he knows he's missing out on and that he knows he
Yeah.
wants. And so it's just a great conflicted character that I like, that I think
Hmm.
is really, really well done. So yeah, that was my pick was Crosshair. Who do you have for the Bad Batch?
I had to go with Omega, just
Yeah,
because like she's such the heart of the show,
definitely.
and you can't beat that accent. Like
I
it's
know
just,
it's so great.
I love characters with accents, so it's just so fun hearing anytime she talks. It's just like, yes, say more words.
She's a great character. I really like her too. She was very close to being my pick because yeah, like you said, she's the heart of the show. She's kind of the centerpiece of the show. And she's had a really interesting kind of transformation over the course of the series, kind of becoming a soldier in her own right. And
Mm.
I really hope she gets to meet her brother Boba one day. That's my hope. We'll see if that happens in the third season. I don't know. But yeah, great pick. All right, moving on to Solo, a Star Wars story, which I have here. Um, Solo is one of my favorite Star Wars movies. Every time I watch it, I like it more. I really do enjoy this film. It's just a fun, easy to watch adventure. It's not like you don't feel like you have to watch the one before it or after it or anything like that. It just stands on its own really well. So it's really good. It was tough. There's another, all these are hard in many ways because there's so many characters from this galaxy that I like. But I did end up going with Kira, played by Emilia Clarke. I really thought this character was fun, a new character we'd never met before. As much as I like Alden Ehrenreich as Han, and Yuna Swatmo does a great job as Chewie here. Donald Glover, of course, as Lando was great as well. But I really wanted to focus on the newer characters, and I thought Kira really just was the one that stood out to me because she comes up with Han, right? I mean, it's her and Han's story in many ways. She's, a survivor. She's a fighter. She's on the streets of Corellia, working for these gangsters. She's, very cunning as well. And kind of as you meet up with her later, you kind of see that, wow, she's really kind of transformed into a very confident kind of, gangster in her own right, a kind of leader in many ways. And so
Mm.
it's interesting to see kind of how her trajectory went one way, Han went another way. But yet they both kind of ended up in the criminal underworld, So she's a lot kind of a darker character, a kind of a darker version of Han, if you will, that, he could have gone this other
Mm.
direction if he had maybe gotten caught up with the same people. I feel like, obviously Crimson Dawn, the whole kind of syndicate there with Dryden Voss, and we later learn Maul is kind of the overarching, head of that whole organization, is obviously what has influenced her. But again, it's another character a lot like Crosshair, where you can tell there's a heart in there where she kind of knows she shouldn't be doing this, but she's compelled to
Mm.
for her own reasons. And so yeah, I just think Emilia Clarke knocked it out of the park with this role, and she has a line that kind of sums up her character. She says, "Someone falls, you keep running. It's how you stay alive." And I think that kind of sums her up.
Mm.
She's very much a survivor. She's all about just kind of getting through and coming out on top no matter what. And so that's who I ended up picking for Solo. But there were a lot of good picks here. So who did you pick, Josh, for Solo?
Yeah, this one was hard. Kind of like you said, with the mix of new and more classic characters. And I didn't. I wanted to go with Han, but I couldn't go with Han because I want to go with Harrison Ford's Han. Like that would like kind of be a travesty if I went with this Han and not Harrison Ford's Han.
Right.
Um, Even though he does a great job in the film.
Sure.
So this one I also uh, went with Kira.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So and she just stood out to me. I did really like the gunslinger, the
Oh
actor.
yeah,
What
Tobias
is his name
Beckett.
from Hunger Games?
Yeah, Woody Harrelson's character.
Yes,
Tobias.
thank you. Sorry, I
Yeah.
can't. Yes, Woody Harrelson. I don't know why I couldn't think of Woody Harrelson's name. Thank you. Sorry.
It's okay.
But I almost went with his character,
Hmm.
just because he's such an interesting character.
Yeah.
But I thought there was more layers and depth to Kira's character, and she really
Right.
stood out to me more. So
Hmm.
that's kind of what why I picked her. But it was hard. There were a lot of different a lot of different things about each of the characters that kind of makes them stand. But I feel like she stood above the rest, or stood from the rest, I should say.
Great pick. Yeah, really, really like Kira. I hope we see her more. She's one of those loose threads out there. I feel like that we need to know like what's gonna happen. She's going to see Maul, and like there's that gap of time between Solo and Rebels where we don't know what really went on with Maul and Kira and the whole thing. So hopefully one day we
Hmm.
get something where we get to hear that story.
Maybe that'll be the
Um,
next series.
I think it'd be a great pick. Yeah, do a whole Underworld series. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Moving right along from Solo into Obi-Wan Kenobi. This character got his very own series. This was interesting one because two performances really stood out. One was Ewan McGregor, of course, who's fantastic in everything. But I already picked him for episode one and the reason I did that was because
You did.
I knew that this series was where I was going to select Anakin Skywalker slash Darth Vader, because I really do feel like this is Hayden Christensen's best performance that he's given in Star Wars. I think he brings everything that I want to Anakin slash Vader, the imposing, kind of intimidating figure, the kind of, just kind of slow, powerful movements, he's kind of like a slasher movie stalker in many scenes in this show, which is great. And so I feel like this is the most terrifying Vader's ever been, probably. He's very, committed
Mm,
to his, to the dark side and to his mission of serving the Emperor and expanding the Empire and destroying the Jedi and that whole thing. But what's great about what Hayden does here is he really does also include that kind of brokenness that Vader has, his kind of sadness, as well as the anger and the kind of vengeful
mm,
attitude that he has. There's still Anakin in there somewhere. He's buried deep, and we only get a very brief glimpse of him towards the end of the series. But it's just a great, really that scene after they've had their huge, just epic duel at the end of that last episode, and then you
mm,
see his face, and he has that amazing line of dialogue. He says, "You did not kill Anakin Skywalker, I did." That's just a really great moment for both Vader and Obi-Wan, allowing Obi-Wan to kind of let go,
mm,
and say, okay, my friend is dead. I'm not responsible. It's, it was Vader that did it. But, it's just a great moment. And he delivers it really, really well. So yeah, he does a lot with a little because he's mostly in the suit
oh
for this
yeah.
series. So it's pretty amazing what he was able to accomplish with, again, just his physicality. And then that brief moment where we do see part of his face. It's not even his full face. Just all of the emotion came through. So yeah, that's who I ended up picking for the Kenobi series. Josh, who you got for Kenobi?
I have the young Princess Leia
Oh,
for
great pick.
Kenobi.
Yeah, she was wonderful. I agree. She was great.
Um, she's really, yeah. Oh, it's just surprise too. Like, A, knew she was gonna be in the show, and then B, like she just so well. And it was such a lifelong warm character, but also like spunky and just like totally nailed a young person. They I don't remember the actress's name, but they found. But yeah, Leia's really the heart of the show. Like you were saying, he's normally such a hopeful character, and she harbors that hope in this series and kind of brings it back to him, which
Exactly.
is really.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. I agree. The young actress was fantastic. I can't wait to see what she does next. And yeah, she did a really good job there. All right, we're now jumping into the next animated series, Star Wars Rebels. This is, man, it might be my favorite show. It's between this and one other show we'll get to later, but this is a show I've watched so many times. Really like this whole crew of the Ghost. And this one was probably the easiest for me because this is one of my favorite Star Wars
Mm,
characters ever. Kanan Jarrus, aka Caleb Doom. Um, this character is just so cool. He's basically, the way they kind of pitched it to Freddie Prinze Jr., who voices him, was basically we kind of want like Han Solo, but he's a Jedi. So, he's very cool.
mm,
He's very confident. He's, kind of witty, has a lot of, fun, playful banter with especially with Hera. They have a great relationship. He's a leader, he's a survivor of Order 66 himself, so he's very much one of those characters that's kind of lived on the run and kind of in hiding. But he's a Jedi, so ultimately he has to help. So he kind of becomes like Robin Hood of the stars in many ways, That's kind of how they start the show. They're kind of like stealing from
mm,
the Empire to give to those less fortunate. And he does a great job, playing the character. He's kind of the father figure to these younger characters like Ezra and Sabine, and just very heroic. He's very guarded though. He's not very vulnerable initially. He kind of grows
mhm,
in that a lot throughout the show and becomes a teacher. Becomes a Jedi master training Ezra Bridger to become a Jedi and kind of carry on the legacy. But he's also a learner. He learns a lot, and he's always, willing to learn from characters like Bendu, who I really like in the later in the show. So, yeah, definitely one of my favorite Star Wars
mhm.
characters ever. a great iconic look. He has kind of several looks throughout the show. Initially he's got kind of like the pulled back hair, and then he's got the beard, and then he cuts the hair off, and he loses his sight, and so he goes through a lot in the show over the 4 seasons. But very very cool character, very much a character that I kind of is inspiring, for me. And he has a great
That's
line.
true,
He
yeah.
says, "I lost my way for a long time, but now I have a chance to change things." And that's kind of his arc. It's very much a redemption arc, because he has lived kind
Hmm.
of more of a selfish life ever since kind of leaving, since the Jedi Order fell, and then he kind of finds his way back in a really compelling way. So, yeah, Kanan was my pick for Rebels. Josh, who you got?
So I also have canon.
Nice.
And I like what you said there about that quote because it's almost like, and his selfishness isn't necessarily like he's still helping people, but his selfishness is almost like a reserved or restraint on just giving of himself.
Right.
So it's not like a greedy selfishness, so to speak.
Sure.
It's more of a just like the scars of his past and everything affecting how giving of himself he is, and just I don't know. It's just a really complex character
Hmm.
in that sense. I don't think one that we've really seen in Star Wars before. And he is like the leader. He's like that self foundation that kind of grounds the our little band of rebels in the series. Um, he's kind of that anchor, that steadfastness carries. And I don't know. I like it. So.
Yeah, great pick. Great character. Definitely one of my favorites in all of the animated series. Really, really cool stuff. And we get to see him briefly in Bad Batch as well, which was fun, a younger version of him.
Mm.
There's also a comic series all about him called The Last Padawan, which is really good. So, great. Well, we're
Yes.
moving on now to Andor.
Ooh.
So Andor is one of the latest live action series on Disney Plus, which is acting as a prequel to the Rogue One character Cassian Andor, hence the title. I did not go with Cassian in the Andor series. I ended up going with Mon Mothma. I really have always liked Mon
Mm.
Mothma. She's got a very brief role in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, but uh, she kind of makes an impact there because she's like the leader of the rebels. She's like telling everybody what to do. She's very soft spoken and kind of regal looking, but so interesting kind of almost cameo, you could say, in Episode 6. And then when they brought her back for Rogue One, or they cast this actress Genevieve O'Reilly in Episode 3, but her scenes were deleted. Um,
Mm.
and then I'm so glad they brought her back for Rogue One. And then now this Andor series, we really got to dig deep into who Mon Mothma is, what she's all about, her kind of domestic life. I found all of that very compelling. Initially, when the
Yes.
scene kind of cut to that, I was like, really? What are we doing here? What is this going to be like a family soap opera now? But it was really compelling. It was very well written. Tony Gilroy is just such a great writer. And Genevieve O'Reilly is a fantastic actress. I think that we really get to again see her leadership capabilities. We get to see her kind of confidence, but we get to see her kind of worried about this whole thing. Like how is this going to work? She's kind of just getting into this whole rebellion idea. We get to see her as a wife and as a mother, and her kind of struggles there. And then of course all the politics of it, as well as what's going on in the rebellion. Her relationship with Luthen Rael, played by Stellan Skarsgård, is fantastic. I thought all their scenes together were absolutely wonderful. I was this close to picking Luthen. I really like him in the show
Hmm.
too, but for me, just getting to see Mon Mothma, this character that we already knew, expanded upon in such a cool way, was why I ended up picking her. And so yeah, she's very, very sincere, very intelligent, obviously, and it's just really good, really really good stuff with her. So that's who I ended up going with Andor. Josh, who do you have for the Andor series?
Yeah, for Andor, it was close. I almost picked her. I almost also picked Andy Serkis's character,
Oh,
Kino Loy, just because you know you, he doesn't have that much screen time across the whole series, but you immediately have that connection with them, or I don't know about immediately, but you and that with that small amount of time you develop such a connection with them,
yes,
especially and how the last time we see him, the scene at the last time we see him, how it
right,
leaves off. But
right.
I chose chose Deidre Miro, the Imperial.
Oh,
I don't actually
yes.
remember what position she is, but she's in the Empire,
Right.
and I chose her because of just the complex of like she's the bad guy, but we're rooting for her,
Yeah, right.
which isn't something we've necessarily seen in Star Wars, is not at least for like just your regular Imperial person. Like you may have pity on someone Vader chokes out, but it's not like we're necessarily rooting for any particular Imperial officer. And so I just really liked her character. Like at first you're like, oh, villain, and then you're like, but want her to win. I really like duality to her character.
Great. Yeah, she's a great pick. All right, so moving straight from Andor into Rogue One. Of course, Andor's getting a second season soon. It will lead directly into this film, which itself is a prequel to Episode 4, about the rebel spies who stole the plans to the Death Star. This time I did pick Cassian Andor. I think
Mm,
Diego Luna is just fantastic in this role. He brings a lot to this
mm,
movie. I feel like he's definitely my favorite character in it because the introduction to him is just kind of like startling in some ways. Like, oh, here's this rebel spy,
yeah.
and then they just offs this guy, and I was like, whoa, they mean business. So yeah, it's definitely a harder edged Star Wars movie. But we really do get to see him as a spy. I kind of wish there was maybe a little more spying, like, disguised as Imperial. We
Mm,
get that at the end of the movie, like they're disguised as Imperials infiltrating a base, but I thought all of that was really well done. He's very committed to the cause at this point, unlike he is in the Andor series until the end of that first season. Just in Rogue One, just through the dialogue, he says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. Um, so that's just kind of instantly compelling and interesting. He's, again, very much a fighter, very intelligent, has a lot of, kind of confidence in what he can do and his ability, and in again the cause of the Rebel Alliance and fighting the Empire. So really good. He's not very trusting, and he's not very. I feel like he's not very easy to
mm,
trust because of his kind of his kind of attitude and his demeanor. But he does have a great relationship with K2SO. That's a really good back and forth that those two have. And then his relationship with Jin, just the way that develops over the course of the film is really interesting too. So yeah, he ended up being my pick there for Rogue One. So Josh, who do you have for this film?
I have K2SO,
Oh, nice.
and
Okay.
I don't. He's probably my favorite droid.
Yeah.
He like a lot of the droids, early C-3PO and R2D2 are like comic relief, and he is too.
Yeah.
Alan Tudyk does such a great job
Yes.
delivering that, both
Great.
vocally and physically. But he's like a different side of the comedic relief, where he has that like sarcasm, and he's not afraid to say what he thinks, and or hit Cassian upside the head. Uh,
Great.
which is there. I don't know. There's just so many great moments that make me laugh or smile for this character. So I had to pick him.
Excellent choice. Yeah, he's really fun to watch. Great performance. So can't wait to see if hopefully he's in the second season of Andor. We got to see how they meet. All right, folks. Well, this
He
is it.
better
We're moving
be.
into the original trilogy now. Episode 4, A New Hope. Another tough one. These, like you said, the trilogies, the episodes are hard to pick because there's a great mix of characters, and it's like, oh man, that character has a great moment here, but then did they have a great moment later? So you kind of have to look at the whole trilogy and figure out like, okay,
Mhm.
who has their best moments when? I ended up going with Princess Leia for episode 4.
Ah.
I really like the introduction. The movie really starts. I mean, it starts with C-3PO and R2D2, but as far as human characters, it starts with her, as far as the main protagonist of that movie.
Mm.
And I just think it's kind of interesting. Like she's kind of like hiding, and she's got the hood on, and like she's got her blaster, and she blasts some stormtroopers, and it's just a great kind of moment. No dialogue, and then when she does have dialogue, Carrie Fisher just delivers it so well. Very kind of again confident and just very bold. We definitely get to see her as a leader. Into the garbage chute, fly boy. Like she really takes charge of like any kind of scene she's in, which is really just fun to see. Another character that I feel is very honorable as well. We get to now know that she was raised by Bail Organa and his wife on Alderaan. Very honorable characters, and who are always involved in the rebellion from the beginning. So she's very loyal. Again, another character that I feel is very hopeful throughout the films. Very honest, speaks her mind. Is not afraid to do that. And she's also later on we get to see her as a sister and a mother. And so yeah, for all those reasons, I had to pick Princess Leia, one of my favorite characters in the saga. She has so many great moments later too. But again, a lot like Padme, I felt that here is when she's most active physically,
Mm.
as well as with some great dialogue too in this film. So that's why I ended up going with Leia. Who do you have for episode 4?
This one was such a hard, this whole trilogy, I think, was the hardest to try and figure out who I was going to put where because, like you said, everyone has so many great moments at different points. And so who do I put where?
Right.
Um, and so I ended up going with Vader, Darth
Oh,
Vader for this
okay.
one. He just has the iconic entrance and he just has such a commanding presence here. And, he's really, aside from Tarkin, he's the main antagonist of the film. So I don't know. This is really where I don't know. I just went with him because he just had so many good, I guess, more iconic or memorable moments in this movie in particular.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great introduction, like you said, to any movie villain. That entrance is really memorable. And yeah, he's certainly some great dialogue. I find your lack of faith disturbing. That's one of my favorites. So yeah, good pick. Good pick. All right, moving on to episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Many people's favorite Star Wars movie ever. The film has so many great moments. Yeah, this was another difficult one. I actually thought about Vader for this one because of obviously
Mm.
the big reveal moment and the lightsaber duel and all that is so good. So I was close to picking him. Ultimately, though, there was only one character I could pick, and that is Yoda. I find Yoda to be the best in this movie. Best Yoda ever was his very first appearance here, played by the great Frank Oz and puppeteered by Frank Oz. Wow, what a great performance. I mean, it's just really the perfect marriage of an actor and a character creating this role. He's he's funny, but he's also very wise. He's obviously extremely powerful. He's just one of a kind, such a unique character. One of those very unexpected characters that comes along and you're just like, oh, what is this little creepy, weird thing that Luke has run into? And then it's like, oh, this is the Yoda that he was going there for, the great warrior. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that kind of misdirect that they did with this character. Very kind, very calm, very peaceful character. Like I said, obviously he's extremely wise, imparting all this great wisdom to Luke throughout the film and training him to be a Jedi. So yeah, there are just so many memorable, lines, do or do not, there is no try. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Also, basically every line he says is like kind of an iconic line of
Yeah.
dialogue. So, yeah, ultimately I had to pick Yoda because even though he shows up in other, films and series and is always great, but to me there's just something really special about Yoda in this film. So that was my pick. Who do you have for Empire?
I also have Yoda.
Oh, okay, great.
And just that, yeah, just that comic relief aspect really, I don't know, he kind of doesn't have that in the other ones, which maybe it's because he's
Hmm.
been a hermit for like almost 20 years and he's by
Right,
himself and he's kind of gone a little crazy a bit.
right.
But yeah, like his interactions with R2 especially where he's like going through all of Luke's stuff and he's like fighting with him over the light and he's like hits him with the stick. Like it's just so good.
Yes.
Um and so yeah, I had to pick him here. But yeah, another good line is like after Luke tries to lift the X-wing and he storms off and like that is why you fail. And it's just like
Yeah.
there's such like you
Yeah.
said, there's such wisdom in this character as well. I don't know.
Yes.
It just shines so brightly in this film.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what does Luke say? He says, "I don't believe it." After Yoda's able to lift, he goes, "I don't believe it," and he says, "That is why you fail. You know, you don't
Mm,
believe." So that's yeah, it's
that's what it is. Yeah,
such a good
yeah.
moment. So many good moments there with Luke and Yoda and Mark Hamill. We don't give Mark Hamill enough credit for acting off of a puppet, which had to have been a
Mm.
challenge. He did a
I
great
almost
job
picked
too.
him for this one.
Yeah, yeah, he's great in that one for sure. Moving on to episode 6, though, Return of the Jedi. I did pick Luke Skywalker for this one. This is my favorite Luke. He's, fully come into his own as a Jedi. And he's just, when we first see him, I mean, that's what a great entrance. We can tell he's conflicted though. We can tell like, he's confident. He's maybe a little too confident going in there with Jabba and all of his
Mm,
goons and trying to rescue his friends. He's very confident in his abilities at this point. He's very powerful at this point. He's kind of become, this galactic adventurer hero character. Um, and is kind of flirting with the dark side. So I feel like again he's more conflicted here maybe than ever before, especially after what was revealed at the end of Empire, but he does a great job balancing that. He's still a hopeful character. Obviously, at the end of the film, we see that, there's still hope that he, still believes his father can, turn back to the light side and be redeemed. So he's still a very compassionate character, still very honorable and true. We see him as brother of Leia in this movie for the first time, really. And we get to see him even more as a leader than we did in episode 5, which we got a little bit of. We see him as a friend, a friend of Han Solo and Lando and other characters, and then we see him as a son of Vader. So all those different elements really come
mm,
together in this one movie that I feel like the first two built towards. And so, yeah, for that those reasons, and the action sequences with him on Jabba's sail barge is just super cool. The lightsaber duel, I think, is even better than the one in episode 5 with him and Vader on the second Death Star, as the Emperor's kind of looking on creepily in the background. It's just some great moments. And then he has that great line to the Emperor where he says, "Your overconfidence is your weakness." So he's got some good dialogue in there
mm,
too. The moment with Anakin, "I have to save you," and then Anakin says, "You already have." "Tell your sister you were right about me." All those
mm,
great moments, very emotional, impactful moments that, again, Mark Hamill just plays it so well. One of the best movie heroes ever, and I feel like he just fully comes into true form in this movie. So, yeah, I had to pick Luke for episode 6. Josh, who do you have for Return of the Jedi?
I also have Luke Skywalker.
Okay, great.
Feel like I could have put him anywhere, especially because he's kind of like the main character. I don't know, he's one of the core characters, so I feel like I could have put him anywhere
Sure.
in any of these three original trilogy films.
Right.
But I I said the same. I wrote down the same thing you said about him coming into his own in this film. I was like, oh, that's. I looked down. I was like, that's what I said too. He said the same exact thing.
Great minds think alike.
Um, yes, but you made really great points about like all of the elements of his character really come to fruition and come to a head in this
Yeah, all
film,
the
like the father
relationships.
and the brother and the friend and the leader,
Right.
like all those elements, which I didn't think about, which I really liked. That was a really good point that you made. But I think just that realize that him being fully realized as a Jedi, and that confidence in that, like fighting for the light no matter what, I think is really what makes him stand out to me in this film, or why I picked him in this film as maybe opposed to some of the other two, or Last Jedi. Yeah, I think especially that he stands up to Palpatine, like throws away his lightsaber. I'm a Jedi, like my father before me. Like, it's
Epic
just
moment.
says something about him and says something about Vader, who he's trying
Right.
to redeem in that moment at the same time. So it was a
Yes,
great line.
it
Um,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines in the whole saga for sure. Great pick. All right. Well, after Return of the Jedi, we have a new era in Star Wars, starting with The Mandalorian, which takes place about 5 years after the fall of the Empire, as the New Republic now rises. The Mandalorian is It's up there. It's right there with Rebels for my favorite Star Wars series. I've watched these episodes so many times. now have them all on 4K, so I can watch them whenever I want in
Nice.
glorious Ultra HD. And I have I've rewatched almost all these since I got these for Christmas. And
Mm.
it's just so much fun to revisit. For this one, it may seem obvious to go with The Mandalorian, so I didn't. I actually went with Cobb Vanth. Cobb
Ah,
Vanth is a character played by Timothy Olyphant in the second season, and he just did a really good job bringing this character to life. This is a character I was introduced to in the Aftermath books. He's got kind of his own little chapter there in one of those books where he's introduced, and he comes across this Boba Fett's armor and all this cool stuff. So it was really cool to see him in live action, bringing that element in, from the existing canon. And then, he just looks really cool in the armor and out of the armor. He plays the role really well as if he's kind of an old West sheriff from some, old Western
yes.
movie, which is a lot of fun. Another character that's very confident, very cool. He's dedicated to, this town that he lives in, Los Pelgos, and he's, this lawman. He's definitely a gunfighter, very quick on the draw. What's interesting about him, though, as I was thinking more about it and I rewatched that episode, The Marshal, he's kind of a bigot in many ways too. He really dislikes sand people,
Mm.
and so
And
he kind of
most
has this
people
kind
did.
of prejudice to overcome in that episode, which is really interesting. And it's really fun to watch that happen. And so, he ultimately has to team up with them to defeat the Crate Dragon, which is, decimating his town. And so, yeah, just a really cool character. He shows up again in another series we're about to talk about. But I felt like his introduction here was just really compelling and interesting and fun, and I can't wait to see more from this character. So, yeah, he's the one that I went with for The Mandalorian.
Interesting point on the Tuscans you bring up, because I feel like until, I guess really until maybe the Book of Boba Fett, like they're that faceless villain,
Right.
that they're
Yeah.
just monsters or whatever that we don't, which I think that was interesting to kind of bring a different side of them. But
Yeah. Well, it's cool how they
uh,
actually if you really think about even the prequels, that scene with Anakin slaughtering them, you do see like, okay, they have like a society, like they have
mm,
there's men and there's women and there's children and there's like, they're so like they've slowly built that in a really cool way that I think is pretty neat.
yeah, that's a good point, true.
So who'd you go with for
But
Mando?
I had to go with Grogu,
Ah, of
Baby
course. Of
Yoda.
course.
So
Yes.
he just steals the show,
He
honestly.
does. He
Uh,
does.
enough good things cannot be said about his character,
I
and
agree.
uh, all the credit due to all the engineers and the operators and all of that that just bring him to life. It's a truly a feat, a cinematic feat.
Yes, absolutely. And a bold move by Jon Favreau to be like, hey, we're gonna make another Yoda, but it's a baby, it's all new
Mm,
character. And that's kind of interesting when you think about that, like him creating that show, being like, this is gonna be our big reveal, at the end, this little baby that he looks like Yoda and he's force sensitive. It's just a really smart, clever storytelling device, smart, character, and obviously a huge marketing
mhm.
boon
Yep.
for the most selling toy I think of probably 2 years in a row. So
He's Star Wars' Stitch.
exactly. Yeah, that's a good comparison. That's good. I like that. All right. Well, now we're moving on to the next series, which is the Book of Boba Fett. And for this series, I picked The Mandalorian, Din Djarin, because he has a great episode, a couple episodes he shows up in this series. I guess Tamira Morrison kind of feels like he kind of hijacked the show from him, which is too bad, I guess. But it's a great moment. It's a great episode, The Return of the Mandalorian, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, which was such a great episode, bringing him back into the storyline, and just really like how they've depicted this character, this kind of lone bounty hunter who has to take on the responsibility of a father, So he's this kind of, father figure that's kind of learning how to be a good father. He's not very good at it initially. And he's kind of learning throughout the show how to kind of show more compassion, how to be more honorable, very much a kind of ruthless bounty hunter when we first meet him. His line is, I can bring you in warm or I can bring you in cold. He's like, I don't care. I can kill you or not kill you. It doesn't matter to me. I'm doing a job. So he's very kind of selfish, single-minded type of a character. Man of few words. Pedro Pascal does a great job voicing him. But we've also got to talk about Lakeith and Brendan Wayne, John Wayne's grandson, who plays the character on set. They all three of those guys bring the character to life, and do a great job with that. So probably one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, just because he's got a great look. The armor is just really cool looking. He's another one of these characters that, as we learned more about his backstory, he's a survivor. He's got a really interesting kind of background as far as that goes. He is a very honest and straightforward character, which I like. And again, he's learning, to be more of a kind of compassionate figure, a father figure, of course, to Grogu. And then, he's instrumental in the kind of reclaiming of Mandalore, and his dedication to his people and to his creed, to his beliefs, is very inspiring as well. So yeah, a character that I really like, and I can't wait to see where they go with him in the movie that they've just announced and all these other big things that are coming up for him. So yeah, that ended up being my pick for Book of Boba Fett. Who do you got there for that one, Josh?
So this one actually had Cobb Vanth.
Okay, cool. Okay, great.
So I actually totally forgot he was in the second season of Mando.
Yeah,
But just because I don't know, I guess I kind of wrapped all those in my mind
sure.
for his character, but I feel like he has more of the, I guess, the heroic side of his character here instead of the not antagonist, but like opposition
Right, sure.
uh side that he kind of has kind of in the like he's also protecting, but he's still in opposition against set against Mando
Right, right.
in that show. But here, like they've since realized and that they're on the same side, and like they did in the second season there, and so now we kind of revisit it. And so I don't know. I really like this character. Like you said, I hope we see more of it. He just has that like those cool gunslinger vibes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's in the back to tank at the end, so he's definitely coming back. I don't know if it'll be in the
Oh, I
Mandalorian
forgot about
movie or if it'll be elsewhere, but yeah, yeah, great stuff. All right, moving on to the next series. It is Ahsoka. Ahsoka is the series that was just aired a few months back. So most recent series from Star Wars. And this is the one where I went with Ahsoka. I went with the title character for once. And most of these I haven't. But
that.
yeah, Ahsoka was my pick for this one because I like to see where she is at this point in her journey.
Mm,
We saw her in Rebels. She was great in Rebels, obviously introduced in Clone Wars, but we don't really know much about what happened to her during the years, during the original trilogy. So bringing her back, years after Return of the Jedi in the Mandalorian series, where we get introduced to her, was really cool, to see, that she's kind of off on her own, kind of searching for Thrawn, for Ezra. And then, the series picking up with her, it was great to see, that opening with her kind of searching for that map, kind of like a little Indiana Jones adventure she had. And then, getting reconnected with Sabine and Hera and Chopper and all those great characters that we were introduced to in Rebels, and learning that she tried to train Sabine, and then there was a falling out, and so reconnecting with all those characters after that history that we didn't get to see was just really compelling for me. And I thought Rosario
mm,
Dawson, she's obviously very passionate about Star Wars in general, but I feel like this character specifically, this is one of those fan castings that was out there for a long time, and she like went on her social media and was like, "Yes, I want to play this character. I love this character." So it's really cool to see that happen. Like a great actress who
Hmm.
also happens to be a fan get to actually do what they want to do and play the role. And she's just done a great job. I really think she captures the spirit of the character, although, of course, she's at a very different place now. She's kind of a lost Jedi. Like, she really doesn't have much direction. And throughout the course of the series, we really get to see her fully come back. There's some great moments with her, after she, sheds the gray, and becomes Ahsoka the White, and we kind of see her smiling more,
Yes.
and she's a lot more kind of a little more banter, like she had in the Clone Wars, and kind of gets back to that very hopeful place that we know
Hmm.
she's kind of longing to go back to. So really liked the character there and what they did with her, bringing her through that kind of character arc. She's great in the action sequences. Of course, she's got the white lightsabers, which are just super cool looking. And then she did a great job with
Hmm.
all the fight sequences. She's a very tough character, very powerful. Again, a survivor, of Order 66 and Anakin and all the amazing stuff they did with her and Anakin in that episode,
Oh,
was just
oh my gosh.
fantastic. So yeah, just really, really good stuff in that show. I feel like that really brought Ahsoka to the forefront, and we got to even see the flashbacks with her. There's tons that they did with the character there that I just thought was really, really good. So that was my pick for Ahsoka. Josh, who do you have in the Ahsoka series?
This is another one that I knew I wanted Ahsoka elsewhere. So this is another one that I like immediately was like, oh, I know the answer here. So I put Balin.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Just
Balin
because,
is a fantastic character too.
oh my goodness, yeah, he's the standout for me, especially because he's a new character that we have known previous knowledge of,
Right.
and I think kind of like Dooku, it plays into that. Who
Mm,
was he? How did he get from Jedi to here?
yeah,
Like that whole mystery around his
right.
character is so fascinating. And then
Hmm.
what is his? Really, we only know what we see right in the show, and then kind of what they tell us a little before what he hints
Hmm.
at from his past. What his past is, and then what he's seeking are both mysteries.
Right.
And obviously, the conclusion they leave in the show is just like, oh my gosh, um, for everyone who's seen Clone Wars. And so uh, I don't know, he has just he's an imposing character. He immediately has like a sense of gravitas, and he's almost like a dark Qui-Gon,
I
where
was
he
just about to say
has
that.
that. I think you may be the one who said it to me before, but he has that kind of willing to do bend the rules or whatever, but he still has that sense of wisdom that even though he's like a bad guy,
Right.
he still has a sense of wisdom. And then kind of like Dooku, he's just using everyone, even his own apprentice, as a means to an end,
Yeah.
to his end, and to
Hmm.
what he's trying to do,
Right.
good or bad side.
Exactly. Yeah. Great character. Ray Stevenson, sorely missed. I don't know how they're going to recast because I feel like so much of it is
Yeah.
him. Like, just, I was rewatching actually the first episode last night, and he's huge. Like, like, his shoulders are so
Yeah.
broad. He's so tall. It's going to be hard to recast, but it's basically been confirmed. I don't know if you saw Dave Filoni's sketch from season 2 of Ahsoka. It's him on the, hand. So obviously
I
they're
thought that was
continuing.
Ahsoka on it.
It does look like Ahsoka's there too. It looks like there's two figures there. I don't know if it's Ahsoka and Sabine, and maybe they're trying to find
That's what I
Balin.
thought
I
it
don't know.
was.
I'm not sure, but it's clear that they're continuing that story, which I'm glad for because it's obviously a pretty big
Yeah.
cliffhanger. But yeah, recasting is going to be tough because he knocked it out of the park. That role is just so interesting. That character. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, great pick.
Became immediately iconic within a matter of episodes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He really did. He really did. Great. Well, let's move on to Resistance, the next series in the timeline, building towards the sequel trilogy. Resistance is a fun show. It's 2 seasons. It's an easy watch. It's very family friendly, and there's several characters that I like here, but the one that always stood out to me was Jarek Yeager. Yeager is kind of the old
Mm.
wise kind of mentor figure. He's a former Rebel Alliance pilot, kind of just seeking, like, a quiet life. He doesn't really want anything to do with the war anymore or any of the rebels or Empire or Jedi or any of it. So he's kind of living a quiet life on the station as a mechanic and a shopkeeper. But of course, he gets drawn back into this conflict with the Resistance and the First Order, as you do. So,
Mm.
yeah, he's just really, really well characterized, has an interesting backstory. one of those kind of wise mentor figures that I think is really compelling. So ultimately went with Jarek Yeager for Resistance. Who do you have on Resistance, Josh?
On this one, I almost went with Niku, but I ended up with Kaz,
Great.
Kazuda
Yeah.
Xiono.
Yeah.
Uh, they're both kind of annoying in the beginning, but then they both kind of grow on you.
True.
And so by the end, I don't know. I guess I went with the main character for once. He's just I don't know. He's the main character of the show, and like I said, by the end of it, you just like really get to know him a lot more, and he I don't know, becomes a little more compelling, I guess, as opposed to he matures as a character. He grows as a character throughout the show.
Definitely, I agree. Yeah, he's a great character. I would like to see him show up elsewhere. I don't know if he ever
Mhm.
will. It was cool that we got to see his dad in Ahsoka briefly. That was fun
Yeah.
in the Senate there. But yeah, great pick, great pick. All right, let's move right into episode 7, The Force Awakens. Again, this trilogy is full of great characters. I really like all the new characters here. But I did go with Han Solo for The Force
Mhm.
Awakens. I feel like Harrison Ford delivers his best performance here of all the Star Wars films. He's kind of it's kind of like a greatest hits of Han because he's back to being a scoundrel smuggler, but yet you kind of see shades of that general and that leader. You also
Mhm.
get great scenes with him and Leia. And you find for the first time see him as a father too. And what was sadly his final scene. But great, great stuff. I mean, really cool. Look, I like the jacket, it's no, well, it's a new jacket. And all the stuff with him and Chewie. So many great Han and Chewie moments here. I mean, you're cold, all that stuff is so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
he gets to
Love
use the
that line.
crossbow for the first time. It's like, really, you've been with him for like 30 years, you've
Mhm.
never used that weapon before? But it was just great. It was just so many great moments. And then, his interaction with the younger characters like Finn, listen,
Mhm.
big deal. Like I really love the way he kind of talks to them and Ray, he's very like compassionate and kind towards Ray, but he's still kind of
Mhm.
isn't like fully vulnerable. He's still like it wouldn't pay
Mhm.
well, wouldn't treat you nice, that kind of thing. But he's clearly trying to help her, all that kind of stuff. So I just think
Yeah.
that everything that you like about Han is kind of here. And
Mhm.
it's just some of his best moments, because again, you see him as a criminal, running from all these crime syndicates that are coming after him, and then you see him kind of fighting for the resistance and all that. So all that's really great. His final scene, I think, is just there's no better way to go out than at the hands of,
Mhm.
this new villain, that they've created for this trilogy. Adam Driver just is incredible in the whole trilogy, but in this movie as his debut, as the character is really just like, man, hits pretty hard. That final moment where he's really trying to, bring his son home as Leia told him to, and he's trying. You can tell like Han really does want to go back to Leia, for them to be a family again. Like that's deep down there, and so he takes this last shot and fails, unfortunately, at his own demise. But it's Harrison always wanted the role to kind of be impactful in some way, and obviously he got to do that for Adam Driver's character. And so yeah, it's great. It's great. It's just a really good film, and I feel like it's the best of Han. So that was my pick for episode 7. Josh, who do you have for Force Awakens?
So this one was a little hard because the sequel trilogy as well, because I knew immediately two characters, which I'm sure we're probably gonna have the exact same characters for this whole thing, this whole trilogy, because I also picked Han
Okay,
for The
great.
Force Awakens. So I was like, who's the other one that I would pick, and where do I put them?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and this one maybe it's just because I've seen it more recently than I have the original trilogy, but I think kind of like what you were saying, it's like it encompasses all of what we love about Han in this role.
Yeah.
And I won't add much more to what you said because you already said it so well, and much better than I was, and more so than I was even going to say. But I think it also is a testament to just how good Harrison Ford is that he can come back this many years later to this role, to this character, and just knock it out of the park, just do such an amazing job.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, well, let's move on to episode 8, The Last Jedi. See if we have the same pick again. Because in this one, I actually went with Rey. I went with Rey for episode 8. I feel like great introduction, episode 7, but here is where we get a lot of her development, and there's a ton of development with her in 9 as well, obviously. But I feel like all of her scenes with Luke, Mark Hamill, it was so hard not to pick him for this one because I think this is
Mhm,
probably his best performance
mhm,
he gives. But her playing off of him, her playing off of Chewie, her playing off of Adam Driver, Kylo Ren, all of it was just so impactful, emotional, intense.
mhm,
I guess we don't really get to see the scavenger side, but we know from episode 7 she's a scavenger, she's a survivor, she's a fighter, she's had to kind of fight her whole life. We get to see how her past kind of affects her, right? Her being abandoned by her parents. And then, we get to see how powerful she is. We get to see, that she's very much committed to the cause of the resistance and wanting to take down the First Order. She really wants to become a Jedi, and she doesn't really know what that is. She doesn't know really what the Force is or anything. It's making things float. Is I think her line to Luke, and he's like, "What are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about." So
I
it's
feel
cool to
it. I
see.
feel it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so he really trains her in a unique way that really no Jedi has
Mm,
ever been trained in before, in that he kind of shows her the hubris of the Jedi Order,
mm,
as well as, obviously you don't want to go to the dark side either, but there's this kind of middle ground almost where, you're on the light side, but you're not adhering to all these kind of rules that the Jedi Order had you living by. So it's really interesting. It's a lot of interesting stuff with the mythology and the lore of Star Wars that comes out here. And Daisy Ridley, just every moment she sells, I feel like she really does throw herself into the role. The whole communication thing she has with Kylo Ren is so compelling and interesting and different that I really thought was cool and really built their relationship in a really interesting
mhm.
way. And then, of course, that throne room scene is just iconic for so many
Oh,
reasons. It's great. And then the last moment with her, uh, on the ship with the rebellion, and Leia's there, and she's like, "How do we build the rebellion from this?" And Leia tells her it's all we need. And so it's a great kind of ending to the arc of her kind of fully committed to her new role. She's kind of been mentored and trained now by Luke, and how they're going to kind of move forward with it. So yeah, Rey is just to me a great character that is really she really just shines in all these movies. I could have picked Rey, honestly. I think she's my
mhm.
favorite character
Yeah.
throughout the whole trilogy, but here is where I felt like they did a lot of the kind of heavy lifting, if you will, with her character
Mm,
development. So that's why I went with her here. Did you pick Rey for episode 8?
I did.
Okay, okay, great.
Yeah, I did. And I think, like you said, her character development is in this movie the most.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it as we were talking about her character and becoming a Jedi and Luke, and kind of what we were talking about, or what you said actually, in Return of the Jedi. And it's almost like I know this mixes elements of Empire and Return of the Jedi, like with the throne room scene happening in the second movie instead of the third movie, kind of thing. But her story is interesting because in comparison to Luke's and his journey in the original trilogy, like Luke leaves his training early, tries to rescue his friends and fails, and then comes into being a Jedi in the last film and are more fully realized. And it's interesting because in this one, like you said, the training is very different. I feel like when she leaves, she goes to rescue her friends, which she succeeds at, unlike Luke. But I feel like even though, like maybe she still has more that she can learn about training wise and everything, I feel like she's more realized as a Jedi, or she has the confidence, I would say, that Luke probably didn't have in Episode 5. I guess just confidence in herself, really, and who she is as a person and what she believes in, because we kind of see that mirrored, or we see Luke as a foil of that. Like he embodies the fear of failure, and she embodies the hope of newness, of redemption, and then we kind of see him come to that at the end and realize. And so I think that's I don't know, something that's really cool about her character in this film.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. I really like that because yeah, Luke goes to save his friends, but he's also going to defeat Vader. Like Vader killed Obi-Wan and
Mm,
he kind of wants revenge. Like he's going there to,
yeah,
I want to fight Vader and beat him. And Rey is leaving Luke to redeem Kylo because she thinks, oh no, he'll turn to the light if I, help him.
mm,
So that's a big difference between those characters that I like. That yeah, she kind of
their
does get there
motivations.
sooner. Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Great, great stuff. All right, let's move on to episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Say it with me. Kylo Ren, Ben
Kylo Ren.
Solo. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, he's the best. I mean, look, these two characters are two of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. Um,
Yes. Oh my
they
goodness.
have such great chemistry. The actors, first of all, are just fantastic. Every scene they have together, like I mentioned, with the whole kind of like forced communication they have
Mm,
is so interesting. And then in this movie, we get to see them do that even more and duel with that. They're in two different locations, but they're having lightsaber battles with each other. It's just really cool. Visually, it's just phenomenal. But yeah, Adam Driver, what a great actor. I mean, every movie I've seen him in, he's
mm,
fantastic.
yes.
Here, he's really cool because at the end of episode 8, he's really dedicated to the dark side. He's kind of all in on that. And that's where we pick up with him here. But very quickly, we see that he's still very conflicted about, his role in this whole story. I think he really that opening scene with Palpatine, he really gets the sense that maybe I'm just being used as a pawn. Like Snoke was Palpatine. I thought I was talking to Vader, but it was really Palpatine. Like I think from that opening scene, he's like, okay, there's something bigger going on here, and I think he's fairly conflicted even from that opening kind of montage that we get with him. So it's really cool to
Hmm.
see him, broken, and also at his most powerful. So yeah, we just really see him kind of at the height of his powers, if you will, and of course we see his redemption as well here. So just compelling all the way through. Some great visuals, great performance stuff with him and Daisy Ridley, and then of course we have great stuff with him and Harrison, of course, comes back for a great moment, which is really really good, kind of reflecting their moment in Force Awakens. So, yeah, just all in all, great character, and I felt like this was where we got all the best stuff from him. It's kind of cool if you think about. I was thinking about the original trilogy and how his arc reflects Vader. It's sort of like a what if Vader killed Palpatine in Episode 5, because we see a supreme leader, Kylo Ren, at the beginning of this. He's kind of in control of everything. And it's kind of chaotic, It's kind of like he's off with the Knights of Ren doing stuff. And then you have, guys like Bride kind of taking over. And Hux obviously is able to kind of,
Mm,
be the spy and let the resistance in. So it's kind of interesting to see that kind of what if happen with his character there. But yeah, that's who I picked. So tell us why you picked Kylo Ren for episode 9.
yeah, I feel like it was really hard to decide. Okay, so who's because I knew I was going to use Kylo and Rey, but I didn't know which episode to put them in.
Right,
Who was going to be 8 and 9,
right.
and so I think for this one, kind of like what you were saying, it's the uh, I guess the culmination of his arc,
Hmm.
and especially with the his redemption, I think is what really tipped it over for me because he has such a different demeanor once he turns to the light. You just see that
Right.
uh, like almost joy in him.
Yeah,
I think he smiles for the first time in like the whole trilogy.
that's right.
Um, and like he has an awesome fight sequence with the saber coming out and like
Mm.
the shrug and it's just so good.
Yeah,
And then before that, we really see the tug of war kind of, and it's in both episodes, 8 and 9, really that tug of war between him and Ray and them each calling to each other and them each resisting each other and it's just really interesting, compelling. So yeah, I think him and Ray are my favorite two characters from this, but I think he edges out a little bit in the
Yeah.
sequel trilogy for me.
Great, great. Yeah, great pick. All right. Oh, a quote I had to mention from him, which he repeats. It's an episode 7
Mm.
quote, but it's I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. I feel like that kind of, again, is one of those lines that sums up a character a little bit. Like he's kind of always wanted
Yeah.
to be a good guy. I mean, you see, especially from a couple of these books we're about to mention. And I'll actually mention this one now because this ties in. It's called The Rise of Kylo, and it's a comic, which kind of explains how he turned to the dark side a little bit, Snoke and his influence and his. But we get to see him with his uncle, Luke, and I feel like
Mm.
he's always one of those characters that kind of wanted to be a good guy, then was kind of corrupted, and it's kind of always wanted to go back, but felt like maybe he went too far, and so yeah, just a great kind of
Mm.
I love those characters that have that inner turmoil. I think that's displayed
Yeah.
really well, particularly with Ben Solo. So, anyways, moving on to the game. So we're going to talk about the video games. I'm not a huge gamer, but I've played several Star Wars video games. The Force Unleashed, I think, being the first one. Star Killer was really close to being my pick, but I actually went with Cal Kestis, who is from the Jedi
Mm.
Fallen Order and most recently Jedi Survivor games, voiced and performance capture by Cameron Monaghan, who I really like as an actor. I really hope they let him play the character in live action because they based the character on it. The character looks
Yes.
like him, and so that's really
Yes.
cool.
Might as well.
Yeah, I mean he's there. He's a great actor, so why not? But yeah,
Be a
just have to.
waste.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I agree. They just need to find a spot to put him in. So really cool character, as the title of the second game suggests, he's a survivor of Order 66. A lot like Kanan, he's kind of had to live underground almost, like very hidden and, but he's one of those guys that was raised as a Jedi, so he can't help but try to help people and try to live by the Jedi code. And he gets caught up in this, crazy kind of chase across the galaxy with Vader and his Inquisitors and all that. So just a really cool character. He's a very curious character. He's a lot into like um, Jedi artifacts and that kind of thing, and kind of hunts those down across the galaxy, which is a cool element to his character that makes him a little unique. He's got a cool droid BD-1, and just has a cool look. He's got the signature Star Wars poncho look going, which is fun in a lot of the games. So yeah, really cool character that I hope we get more of. I actually haven't played all the way through the second game, played all the way through the first game and really liked it. They're really fun to play. So yeah, that's who I went with for the video games. Josh, who did you pick?
So I haven't. I don't think I've played any Star Wars game that
Mm,
wasn't like a mobile, it's like one of those mobile games that doesn't really have a story.
gotcha.
Since Disney took over.
Okay.
But I played a lot of the classic games like Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast,
Mm,
obviously Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, Battlefront 1 and 2, the OGs.
right.
But I ended up going. I could have gone with Kyle Katarn for the Jedi Outcast.
Ooh, yeah.
But I ended up going with Galen Merrick, Vader's Apprentice, Starkiller. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, just I don't know, something about his character was just like immediately compelling to me. And another one that was a motion capture of Sam Witwer. So
That's
hopefully
right.
they use him in live action as well.
Yes.
Waiting for that debut. I almost thought we're gonna get Ahsoka, but we didn't.
Right. Right.
Um, but at least they know we want it. At
They
least they
do.
know fans want to see him.
Yep.
I guess that's a good takeaway.
Yep.
But yeah, I really like his character. Across both games, he has a very compelling story arc. And I think it was one of the first times we got to see like a cinematic level trailer
Right.
for a video game as well, which they did several. At least for the second game, they did several of those.
That's right. Yep, they did. Yeah, great pick. Yeah, again, he was easily my second choice. Sam Witwer is a favorite of mine. Obviously, he's now known as Maul, did the voice of Maul on the Clone Wars and in Rebels, and has showed up in various places all over Star Wars. He's a big Star Wars fanatic, and is very well connected over there at Lucasfilm, so he gets to help them with a lot of different things. And so, yeah, that's a great character, another kind of tragic backstory, and yeah, great games. Really fun to play both of those games. I vividly remember playing through both of those. So, excellent. Let's move on to the comics and novels. I know you're not a big comic book guy. I don't think you had a comic book pick, so I'll just tell you mine real
No.
quick. It's Dr. Aphra. Dr. Aphra
Mm.
is a really cool character that was introduced in the comics. She's a highly intelligent mercenary slash archaeologist. So she's it's funny too because she's paired with two very sadistic droids who have a lot of very darkly humorous things to say that are a lot of fun. So she's one of those very kind of cunning characters, very quick. She's, can be very manipulative to, get her own ways, very selfish type of character, greedy,
Mm.
she's a treasure hunter. But she's also really fun and just fun to read and fun to watch kind of what she does. She doesn't really have any loyalty to either side, so she kind of can play both sides a little bit. She's kind of a darker version of, I would say she's kind of a mix of Han Solo and Indiana Jones, which is probably why I like her so much because those are two of my favorite characters of all time. So, yeah, she's great. I really hope that we get a live action version because it would be really fun to see her show up somewhere in a movie or a show or anywhere.
Mm.
So yeah, that's who I picked for the comics. I'll give you my novel pick in a moment, but I want to give you a shot to let us know what your favorite character was from any of the books, Legends or otherwise.
I have a problem with buying books, so I have many books, including Dark Disciple, from that are canon, not legends, that I haven't read. So
Right.
yeah, Dark Disciple and Dooku, the Dooku Jedi Lost one, I definitely need to read. I don't have the Dooku one yet. Actually, no, I take
Gotcha.
that back. I read Ahsoka, for one of
Oh,
the early ones, which I was
great.
actually really disappointed with. Um,
Mm, yeah.
any of the books by uh Jude Watson, the Jedi Apprentice, Jedi Quest, or Last of the Jedi series. Like it's really thin. They're technically kids books, but
Okay.
they're really good and they're pretty straightforward. Like it's not like we have there's no filler, which
Sure.
I felt like is what a lot of the Ahsoka book had. It was like a story for like this kind of story, except tons of filler.
Expanded, right? Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of it was like could have done it better if you did it smaller.
Right. Which they kind
Um,
of did with the Tales
so
of the
I think
Jedi
that's the only
episode.
yes, yes. But I think that's the only canon book I've read. But
Okay.
Legends wise, my favorite character is probably, I mean, I'd probably say Qui-Gon, but I already said Qui-Gon. So I will say a character named Ferrus Olin from The Last of the Jedi.
Okay.
He's basically starts out in uh, in the Jedi Temple with Anakin, and he's kind of a foil to Anakin. He's
Hmm.
the teacher's pet. Anakin's like the rogue who's like supposed to live up to his expectations of being the chosen one
Right.
and kind of like being the rebellious kid. And
Yeah.
then Ferris is the upstanding, almost actually pretty prideful Jedi apprentice. And so you kind of see them pitted against each other in that series. But and then he comes back.
Mm.
One of the things I really like about Jude Watson's three series is that characters will return.
Mm.
And so he comes back and is one of the last of the Jedi, which is obviously not Legends. And so Obi-Wan kind of interacts with them and fighting the Empire and Inquisitors and being hunted. So yeah, I don't know, really cool character, and he kind of you see his character development from that prideful apprentice into like brokenness and then having to be a leader and fight for the rebels.
Okay, great. Excellent. Great. Yeah, I did not know about that character, so that's awesome. I'll have to check those out. For the novels, I went with a novel that I just finished, Shadow of the Sith. This to me is
Oh,
like the must-read Star Wars book. It fills in so many gaps for fans of the sequel trilogy like me who wanted to know more about Rey and her backstory and her parents and Luke and Lando and Ochi of Bestoon and all that cool stuff that's, kind of mentioned in Rise of Skywalker. This fully fleshes it out. I mean, this book is absolutely incredible. written by Adam
Mm.
Christopher. It's about 460 pages, something like that. Could not put it
Wow.
down once I started reading it. The character I picked as my favorite, there's a couple of new characters that are really cool. I really like both of Rey's parents, Dathan and Miramar. They're great characters, but I actually went with Lando Calrissian, who I really like. I've always liked Lando. He's very suave, charming, kind of fun character. But here, you really get to go deeper with him into his backstory and into what happened to him after Return of the Jedi.
Mm.
Which, if you just watch the movies, you really don't know anything. But it
Yeah.
is revealed that he had a wife and a daughter. And so it's really cool to see kind of what that did to him, how that changed him, where they are now, that kind of thing. And it definitely shows him as a rebel, as a leader, as a hero, but one who's kind of a little bit lost his way again after what happened to his wife and daughter. So it's seeing him kind of reverting back a lot like Han in episode 7, but then he's given this mission with Luke, and he kind of tries to get his mojo back, I guess you could say, in a way.
Mm.
And it's just really cool. It's very compelling. He goes through a lot in this book, and it's really cool to see from this to episode 9, where we find him there and why we find him there and all that stuff. Just the reasons behind all of it. It's really cool. It's very well done. It's very well written. You just hear Billy D. Williams in your head while you're reading the book. And so very well written. He obviously is a fan of the character and just did a great job writing him. So yeah, for me, anyone who's considering picking up a Star Wars book, go straight to Shadow of the Sith. It's great, very well written, and again, it helps flesh out the current kind of era that we're in for Star Wars, which is a lot of fun. All right, folks. Well, that is it for episode 79 of the Real World Podcast, our favorite Star Wars characters. Josh, thanks for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for having me. We'll have to do more of these with different characters or
That'd be great.
different
Yeah, we
realms
should
of
do an MCU
characters.
one or a DCU one. Yeah, we could do all kinds of, Star Trek. We could go all over the place with this. This is a cool concept. I think we had a lot of fun, and hopefully some people maybe learned some stuff that they didn't know about these characters before. We want to know who your favorite characters are in the comments below. So make sure you leave a list down there. You don't have to leave a full list of 25 like we did, but at least leave a couple of your favorites. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you down there. As I said before, we're huge Star Wars fanatics, lifelong fans of this saga that's continuing. Can't wait to see where it goes in the future. So again, leave a comment. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. And we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.